honorable panelists, all protocols observed, distinguished participants. It's a great honor to be here. I've been to at least 2 of these conferences in the past, and then each time I come back, I'm really inspired that there is hope in our efforts to address adaptation. The theme for this year, the urban adaptation, is of course one of many packages or solutions to adaptation. Ecosystem-based is another, climate proofing and so forth. But there's perhaps no better place to talk about urban adaptation than Dhaka, just given the size of the city and the diversity of livelihoods and perhaps the very vulnerable communities that exist here. Of course, one cannot look at climate change alone. You have to focus on livelihoods of the people, all in the context of development. And perhaps this is something that I'll walk away with, the challenge that exists. How do we impact on people's development in the context of climate change, plus the many other factors that are affecting them on a daily life? It's perhaps safe to say that the people in the slums here and so forth are not trying to become resilient. They're basically trying to survive. And that's a huge challenge on a daily life that I hope that as we do our work, we can translate the science and not simply study them and what they're doing, but also to see how can they reduce their vulnerability and develop out of the slums. Under the convention, there are a number of adaptation entry points. You're familiar with the NAPAs, I'm sure, the National Adaptation Programs of Action, that were actually launched here in Dhaka in 2002. So it's been 13, 14 years since then. A lot of countries have implemented their NAPAs. I know Bangladesh has been very successful. In fact, Salim did one of the mock NAPAs that guided the LDC expert group in developing guidelines for the NAPAs. So that was extremely helpful at that time. And Salim, of course, personally has been involved in the adaptation discourse, as you know, right from the beginning, and it continues to be an effective force. The NAPAs are now being not replaced, but they're transitioning to something bigger, the National Adaptation Plans that was created 3-4 years ago. And this is part of the process to look at the medium and long term and ensure that adaptation is embedded within development efforts, and that the whole community of practitioners, scientists, and so forth contribute to adaptation planning, the efforts that governments are doing to ensure that it does, in fact, lead to concrete outcomes at the end of the day. I'm glad to note that the Green Climate Fund was actually requested out of Paris to consider how to support the formulation and implementation of the NAPs, and they are expected to announce how they're going to implement this during their June board meeting. This is the second time that the GCF has been requested to do something. You recall one of the CBA conferences where one of the declarations was a call to allocate 50% of the GCF funding towards adaptation versus mitigation and so forth. That was a request to the GCF that actually resulted in a concrete outcome. So we are looking forward to equally big outcomes out of this request, and we hope that most countries will have produced their NAPs by 2018, 2020, so that when the GCF is fully operational by 2020, countries will be ready to engage and implement their NAPs. This work is supported by 2 bodies under the convention. One is the Adaptation Committee, the other one is the LDC Expert Group. And I wanted to point out that one of the members of the LDC Expert Group, Adrian Fitzgerald from Ireland, is in the room. And he did talk about some of the work we're doing. And one of the session before this, we talked about I liked and I wish and I wondered. One of the things that we collectively wish for the next CBA workshop is perhaps to do a NAP Expo, a regional NAP Expo as part of the next CBA workshop. So hopefully we can dig deeper into what countries are doing as part of their NAP. With this, I want to thank you all very much for the sharing of your knowledge, your expertise, and the work that you're doing. Constantly we go back to Bonn as we support the LDC expert group to see how can we build on the work and the experience that you're doing. And hopefully all of this will lead to perhaps more concrete visions of what the communities that you're serving. It'll be quite interesting actually to develop a vision for the people in the urban areas, the vulnerable people, to see where do they want to be 5 years from now when they grow up. Do they still want to be in the slums? Or do they want to be somewhere better, and how can they get there in the context of a changing climate? Thank you very much.
Thank you.